Hey, good morning to everybody. It's Daryl here, aka Artist and Recovery. And this video, it's not going to be a long video. I'm going to keep this short, but I've been wanting to do this for some time now. I feel that my life in a lot of ways parallels Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses. Except, of course, I don't have the musical ability, the groupies, the billions of dollars, or the talent, any of that. But my struggles with alcohol and drugs and my subsequent recovery. A lot of the things he says I could identify with just like identical. So I want to talk about that a little bit. The video, there's a really short Instagram reel down below in the video description. I urge you to watch it. It's probably only about 5 minutes long. He's talking to SAMMY, HAGAR, and he's talking about how he didn't drink water for years. And I don't doubt that. And he got to a point where his pancreas burst. Now there's some question about maybe it was his gallbladder, but let's just say it was his pancreas. And he describes how terrifying it was and how he came out of his body and his mother coming into the room and everything. And there is so much identical to things that have happened to me and just the way he describes his feelings and to what's happened in my life. This is something I learned, like in recovery, especially when I started going to NA and AA meetings. I used to think that I was different. I used to think that I was unique in my addiction, in my using, that I had a higher tolerance than other people. I could handle it better than other people. I could get away with more than other people. I was unique. People didn't understand. That's one thing I realize now is that, like, all addicts will say that, you don't understand. Life is so hard for me. I need to use, like that, stuff like that. And that's all nonsense. Here's the thing. So this was about, I got clean and sober on October 23rd of 2006. I had been completely clean and sober for 18 years, and it's going to be 8 months in about 3 days. 18 years and 8 months. And I'm going to tell you about what happened to me. I was drinking and using. I was using Coke. I'm careful the way I'm going to say this because I want the video to be monetized, so I got to be careful with how I talk about these substances. And it must have been cut with something. I don't know what it was cut with, but when I used it, it burned this one particular time. And of course, I did a lot of it. And I was at a keg party, and I was drinking and combining the two things. And I was just drinking and doing everything to excess. This is after I've been using for maybe 15, 20 years. So I was well into my addiction. And I got sick at that party. I threw up, and I drank more, threw up. And I was still at a job at this point. I was actually working for an architect. I was a draftsman, tie and everything. And I went into work. This is part of the thing where I was lying to myself. I thought I had this under control. I still had a job. I had my own apartment, but I had nothing under control. My life was just spinning out of control, and I was losing. I did end up losing everything. But this is what happened. I went into work the next day, and my stomach was hurting terribly, terribly bad. I felt terrible the next day, and I believe I still finished off a few lines that I had before I went into work. And it burned on the way down, and when I did it, and I ran into the bathroom at one point in the morning, about 10 in the morning. I ran into the bathroom because I was going to be nauseous. And the light in the bathroom was a very dim light for whatever reason. And I got sick, and I looked into the toilet, and I was like, that looks like blood. And I turned the light on, and it's blood. It's bright red blood. So I'm like, oh man, I'm in trouble. I started getting worried at that point. And I go tell my boss I have to leave. So he says, okay. I don't think I told him why. I get my car, I drive to the nearest walk-in medical center, and I'm feeling nauseous again as I'm driving there. And as soon as I get out of my car, I feel it, and I throw up in the parking lot. Tons of red blood. Now I'm terrified. Now I run into the walk-in center, and the nurse, the receptionist, you can't wait, sir. You have to fill out forms. And I ran past her. I ran into looking for any room, examination room that was empty. Because I felt like I was going to throw up again. And I ran into a room, and there was a sink, and I threw up. And I filled the sink up with red blood. At this point, I remember looking up at myself in the mirror in front of me, and it started to feel like I was dying. I could feel, I felt like a warm wave of relaxation, like just let go. That's what it felt like. And it was blue underneath my eyes. My face was turning blue. My lips were turning blue. And I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. They called the ambulance right away. The nurse came over and she looked in and she's like, oh, she backed away. She started backing away. She's like, call the ambulance. And they took me in the ambulance to the hospital. I remember asking the EMT in the ambulance. I was like, they were putting IVs in and all that. And I asked, am I going to die? And he said, I don't know. That's, and that's for usually they say, usually they're optimistic. And he said, I don't know. That freaked me out. I get to the hospital. They pump my stomach. I was in ICU. I asked them, I said, what if I don't stop? I hadn't thrown up again at this point. And they said, if you throw up again, we're going to have to cut you open and find you're obviously bleeding internally. I stopped, thank God, I stopped bleeding at that point. They put me in ICU. The guy next to me was an old guy. He actually died. The guy next to me in the bed died like 10 minutes after I was in the room. And they were pumping my stomach the whole time. They put a tube down my nose, not down my throat, down my nose. And it sucked all the fluid out. And they kept constant watch to make sure I wasn't bleeding out to see if it was still bleeding. And it had stopped bleeding, but I could not, they wouldn't give me an ice cube, they wouldn't give me any water for like 3 days. And I had the tube down my nose and it was one of the most terrible experiences. I'm all hooked up to IVs. My mom and my sister come in and they're just crying. They're all crying, and because I'm in ICU, I almost died. And I'm like, I'll never drink again. I'll never, I'm done. And I ended up drinking a week or two later. We're right back at it. See, this is where me and Duff's stories part, because he talks about how he stopped using after that incident. That was rock bottom for him. Unfortunately, it was not rock bottom for me. I kept using, and things got worse for me. I started using more, and I knew. Looking back, it scares me how out of control I was. How I could not stop, even though I knew it was killing me. And it was destroying my life. I could not stop. Every night, I would tell myself, I can't do this again tomorrow. I cannot get up tomorrow morning and go look for money. And then I started using heroin on top of everything else. And I'd have to get it every day. And I was like, I cannot do this again tomorrow. Please just let me die in my sleep. Because I felt so out of control. And I remember, this is where one of the parallels from Duff McKagan's story. He talks about how he saw his mother. And he realized this isn't how it's supposed to be in life. He should be helping her. He should be assisting her. She was in a wheelchair. That's what Duff was saying. And he realized how his life was out of order. This was not the natural way of things. His life was out of order. And I remember being I was in and out of detoxes and rehabs over 13 times before it stuck. And I remember the doctor asking me, sometimes doctors ask you a question that just gets right to the heart of the matter. And the doctor asked me, he said, Daryl, I was after 14 times, he said, we're not going to take you in here anymore. Don't come to the hospital because we're not, it's not working for you. You keep coming back every 3 months and we're just wasting our time and money. And, you don't want to get clean, do you? And he said this, he said, Daryl, why do you want to get clean? That's what he asked me. That was the question. And it just came right out. It's like, I need to spend time with my mother before clean while we're both still here on this earth. And I started bawling. And that answer just came. It wasn't prepared. I didn't know it was going to come out. But I'm getting goosebumps now. It just, bam, that was the most important reason. Is I wanted to, because I lost my father when I was 9 to terminal brain cancer. So me and my mother and my sister, my younger sister, have been very tight. We grew up, the three of us. I was the man of the family at 9 years old. And I said, I want to spend time with my family, but especially my mother while she's still here. And I want to spend clean time. I want to be clean and spend time with my mother, And it happened. This is the point of this video. Recovery is possible. That has happened now. Every week, tomorrow, as a matter of fact, just Monday, I went to the laundromat with her. You know, I helped her out. We brought she's 81 years old. We brought comforters, blankets and stuff, and I helped her fold them, and we sat and talked for 2 hours in the laundry, man. It sounds boring or whatever. I know it sounds like you guys are probably like, so what? But I love it. I love sitting there and just talking and laughing and spending time with her now that I'm clear-headed and clean and sober. You know, I am living my dream. That was the main reason I wanted to live. The main reason I wanted to get clean was to be able to do that. And I'm doing it now. You know, tomorrow, I usually take my mom out to Dunkin' Donuts for, we sit, you know, we have a coffee and a donut, and we sit and talk for 2, maybe even 3 hours. They get ready to throw us out because we're taking up the seats in the restaurants for so long. I'm just kidding. They're not really going to throw us out, but, you know, and so I am doing this. I'm doing what I wanted. Call it my dream, my goal, whatever, you know, but I'm spending time with my family, you know, and I just love it. Nothing is better, you know, than seeing the happiness on my mother's face. You know, that now that she knows I'm clean and sober, because it was killing her. It was killing her back when I was using, you know, and now I get to spend this time with her. And if I hadn't been able to do this, if I had just kept using, and then she ended up passing away and I never got to spend any real clean time with her, I don't know if I could live with that, you know. But I don't have to, because recovery is possible. I've been clean and sober 18 years and 8 months after being a full-blown heroin and crack cocaine addict and alcoholic, like Duff McKagan. Check out the video. Check out, it's very short, it's only 5 minutes. Duff McKagan down below, talking to SAMMY here, talking about when his pancreas burst. Same thing happened to me, more or less. Recovery is possible. Have a good day.